Greetings, everybody. This is Dr. Flight. It's great to be reaching out to you and working with this video on segment profiles. And again, just to recap, when we do segmenting, we're taking groups of consumers and we're putting them into, or we're taking consumers from a market and we're putting them into groups of consumers that behave in similar manners. They have oftentimes we group them by their needs, and that their needs and motivations for purchasing and consuming products are similar. And so that's kind of the motive of that. And what we want to talk about today specifically is an idea called segment profiles. One of the steps here is when we group consumers together, what we want to do is know as much as we possibly can about them. And so there are some commercial tools available to us, but just in general, what we want to think about are how each group behaves, and then knowing them intimately, knowing them in a way that can create a real understanding, and then we can position the product towards that group of consumers if we really understand their profile. So profiling then is a common thing that we do once we understand and know who the customers are. Here's an example in the health insurance industry. We have three different consumer groups or market segments. We have the insurance minimizers, the basic buyers, and then the premium buyers. And there are four different variables that these groups differ upon. The basic buyers and the premium buyers are pretty similar, except for their indication for separate coverage for accidents. That's sort of differentiates these two groups. So you could almost sell to these two groups similarly, except for on that one dimension. The insurance minimizers, though, are very price driven, and they're not very loyal, if you will. They'll skip and move to different carriers if the prices change and such. And what they look to buy will be minimized. I mean, that's why they're called that. And so now what we can do is when we take this information, and we also have some purchase information down below. The minimizers make up 40% of this company's sales, for instance. That's something to know. They also, however, cause the most number of problems that the company has. Again, if you're looking at that you'll see that. Interestingly enough, though, in the marketplace, in the generic marketplace, these three segments are fairly evenly distributed between 30, 34, and 36%. However, this company has an overproportioned larger proportion of these minimizers. So you can kind of take that for what it is in terms of the market makeup and who this company is serving in terms of these three market segments. But what we want to do is create a persona, if you will, for each of these three types of buyers. And that's what the profile does. So here's another example. This is one of a gas station who has identified 5 different types of consumers, and they've started writing a description, a narrative, if you will, that describes each of their 5 types of consumers. We have the road warriors, the true blues, Generation F3, homebodies, and price shoppers. You'll notice that Generation F3 is the largest. They have the greatest percentage of their sales come from this one category. They're upwardly mobile men and women. Half are under the age of 25, which means obviously half are older than 25. Consistently on the go, they drive a lot, they snack heavily from the convenience store. And this is their behavioral pattern or their consumption pattern described in a narrative for this particular group of consumers who've met some certain criteria. So they all behave the same way. And what happened was the company would take a bunch of variables that describe these consumers, and they'd use some statistics to group them together in a way that makes sense for them. The other ones, so high income, the road warriors, middle-aged men driving a lot of miles, buy premium gas. They use credit cards. They buy sandwiches and stuff, and often use and sometimes use the car wash. Okay, that makes 16% of the buyers. We have the price shoppers who are not loyal at all to the brand or the station. They frequently are on tight budgets, but they also move around a lot. So you can imagine how pricing might be important, and the availability of non-premium gas options would be important to this particular consumer. And they make up 20%. They make up a fifth of their sales, so they're important consumers. Okay, so again, this is just another example of how we've done segmenting, and now we want to create profiles for each of these market segments, and that's one of the things we do. Another way we kind of look at this is something called geodemographic segmenting. And there's a company out there called the Nielsen Corporation owned a subsidiary, and one of the products that they offered was something called Prism, P-R-I-Z-M, Prism. So this is a segmentation tool. However, it's based on lots and lots and lots of different data overlaid by geography. So the geodemographic segmenting concept is you have a geographic footprint, but then you layer on top of that a bunch of data that deals with consumer characteristics. And what they did, they created, I believe it's 66 different categories. I want to say 64 to 66. And each category was a different type of consumer, and they created a narrative for every one of those. So a profile of every one of those. And so in this is an example where you could pull up a zip code, and in this zip code there are predominantly 5 different types of customer, or 5 different profiles. They've named each one of them. So there's the fast track families, the Mayberryville people, white picket fences, country squires, and the pickup patriarchs. So those are names. Those are just names of profiles. And you put a whole bunch of demographic and behavioral and lifestyle types of data together. And within a zip code, you can identify how many, kind of who lives there based on that data. And you can segment and find groups of consumers, and they've identified the 5 top groups as these that are on the screen that are in this again geographic footprint in this zip code. Okay, so and again, we can kind of look a little bit closer when we look at this profile. What do they say the fast track family is? Well, we have some demographic traits. Like I mentioned, these are a bunch of variables that are fed into some software, and statistically they just pull out of it. We have some lifestyle and media traits. So what do they tend to do? Where do they get their information? That's the type of stuff that would be there. And then they've written a narrative to describe this group. Fast track families lead busy, active lives, often centered around the schedules and interests of their children. They're always on the go. They're frequent restaurant diners, drive larger SUVs, visit Pinterest, and tend to shop in bulk at wholesale clubs. And the map kind of gives you an idea of concentrations of where these people live. So 66% of them live in the maroonish type of colors that are there. So a lot up in New England, a lot in the Midwest, a lot in the Mountain West, actually. Okay, so this is kind of again, this is an example of the Prism tool that's available. There are other characteristics that you'll find that are available, and so we have other data. Again, they have all the data, so they can report average incomes, distribution of household size, so how many people are in a household. Married, marital status or relational status is another piece that you can come up with. Age ranges, ethnicity, and all kinds of things like that will pop up by zip code, but also by profile as well. Another company out there is called Esri, ESRI. And they do very similar type of work. Their product is called Tapestry, and Tapestry again, you can. It's a GIS driven type of a system with the same type of put the zip code in, and then it pulls information on the different types of consumers there. Now they have a different set of profiles, or a different profiling model or method. In this case, they have this zip code, they have three primary profiles of consumers who are available or make up this space. They call them the in style, the savvy suburbanites, and the old and newcomers. Okay, and kind of again, it will dig into this data. If you look at or it'll give a profile narrative. If you look at the in style, they describe them as professional couples or singles with no kids, strong work ethic. They like the arts, they travel, they read, they have home maintenance and improvement projects all the time, and they use their phones a lot, basically. And so that's kind of the idea here. Now, one of the interesting things in this particular zip code is there's a university that's located right in the middle, which, is, it has its own zip code, it has its own space, but that is the footprint of a university. And it is populated by one type of profile and only one, dorms to diplomas. And the dorms to diploma profile, they're busy people studying, working part-time jobs, socializing, having fun with friends. They use computers, obviously, internet, cell phones. This is a little bit dated, MP3 players, but they shop impulsively. They carry balances on credit cards. Cooking is often very limited to heating up frozen foods and so forth. Okay, so this is a great example of, again, this geodemographic tool. And again, it's called Tapestry, but a company called Esri. If we dig deeper into this dorms to diplomas profile, here it is. This is one, again, kind of like Prism had 65 different profiles. So does this group here, or so does this kind of methodology, if you will. But you can see here's a whole narrative, and this is called a customer profile. This describes the customer, and I could take this idea and I could create a marketing plan all around this type of consumer. So again, please feel free to pause this if you want to read this in depth. There's a ton more data, though, available for the dorms to diploma people. This is, again, income, race, ethnicity, age, gender, all of this type of stuff is available. Again, further housing needs, some of their proprietary Esri indexes, which a wealth index, a socioeconomic scale, and housing affordability index, all very low, as you can imagine, simply because these are college students, for the most part, who are involved in this space. Last bit here on Esri, we have kind of like we had for Prism, a map, if you will, of where these folks are located, where the density of students are. You can see the density by the circle. It's pretty heavy in and around Boston and parts of Michigan, where universities are located. Ann Arbor, right? We got Ohio State down there. We have LSU down here. We have Tallahassee and Gainesville, places like that. The Raleigh-Durham area, where there's some big universities, is heavily populated there. We have Columbia, Clemson. Again, this is kind of indicates the heat map, if you will, of where people are located in this profile. Okay, and that's one of the values here of doing these profiles. One final tool, again, this one here is very, very similar. It's set up in the same type of way as a geodemographic segmentation tool. It's called Acorn, and this is primarily a product that serves the United Kingdom. So similar, kind of design, however, this time it has 65 different groupings, and it's based on living arrangements, housing. It's primarily a housing driven type of thing, but each of these 60 different groupings, you have 22 different groups with different um, um, types, they call them, in each of the groups, so 65 different types. But each one is defined by a profile and kind of what they do. And I don't have any other further details about that, but just understand or know that similar to Prism, similar to Esri, Acorn is going to deliver the same type of thing that you're gonna have. Okay, so again, these are customer profiles, and they're things that we want to look at in some good depth, in terms of understanding who the customer is as a result of the data that we've collected. We're going to do some statistical analysis. It's usually done by something called cluster analysis in marketing. Depending on how you do your analysis, there's also something called discriminant analysis. If you are unsure of what your variables are that you're going to use to group customers on, and if you already have groups of customers and you don't know the variables that best describe them, you might do something called discriminant analysis. But the other way around, if you have variables and you want to find or explore groups that come out of it, be something called cluster analysis. And it's not particularly hard to do, but you need the software to do it, and go from there. But if you have any questions, let me know. This video has been strictly on customer profiles. I hope it's been beneficial, and reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.